The war in Ukraine continues to evolve, not only on the battlefield, but also in the diplomatic arena. As the conflict approaches its third anniversary, significant shifts are occurring in the relationships between key international players, particularly the United States, Russia, and Ukraine. While the US and Russia are engaging in discussions aimed at finding a resolution, Ukraine finds itself increasingly sidelined, and there's a growing sense of unease and tension among Ukrainians as support from their once staunchest ally, the United States, appears to be waning. Political and military leaders in Europe are actively developing a plan for a European force to deter future Russian aggression. This proposal, which has been under discussion for several months, is gaining public attention and is expected to be a key topic when UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer and French President Emmanuel Macron visit Washington for talks with US President Donald Trump. Starmer has emphasized the necessity of American military backing for the force to be effective, which could prove challenging given Trump's past views on NATO allies' contributions. While Ukraine's preferred outcome remains NATO membership, it seems the US has taken this option off the table, along with the hope of regaining the 20% of Ukrainian territory currently occupied by Russia. In the absence of NATO membership, President Volodymyr Zelensky has suggested that a significant number of European troops, potentially over 100,000, would be needed to guarantee the prevention of renewed conflict after a ceasefire. However, Western officials clarify that the envisioned force would be a reassurance force, not a massive peacekeeping army stationed along the extensive front line in eastern Ukraine. The proposal supported by the United Kingdom and France involves a smaller deployment of fewer than 30,000 European troops. These troops would be strategically positioned away from the front lines, focusing on securing critical infrastructure sites, such as nuclear power plants, and would be supported by Western air and sea power. The front line would be monitored remotely using drones and other advanced technologies. Air power, potentially including American assets, would be based outside Ukraine, possibly in Poland or Romania, to deter breaches of any ceasefire agreement and to facilitate the reopening of Ukrainian airspace for commercial flights. The crucial element for the plan's success is American support. Keir Starmer has stated that a U.S. security guarantee is the only way to effectively deter Russia from future attacks on Ukraine. However, Trump has consistently voiced his opinion that Washington's NATO allies do not contribute enough and that Europe should take more responsibility for its own security. While U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has stated that U.S. troops will not be deployed to Ukraine, he has not ruled out American support in areas such as air transport or logistics. Adding to the uncertainty, General Keith Kellogg, Trump's Ukraine envoy, has indicated that all options remain on the table, as the composition of any force will depend on the outcome of ongoing peace negotiations. Jamie Shea, a former senior NATO official, notes the conflicting signals emanating from different factions within the U.S. administration, making it difficult to discern the true direction of American policy. Russia has already rejected the idea of any troop deployment from NATO nations, even if not under the alliance's banner, stating that it would be unacceptable. The willingness of other European countries to participate also varies. The UK, France, and the Nordic and Baltic states appear most likely to take on significant roles. However, some countries, like Italy, have constitutional limitations on the use of their forces, while others, such as the Netherlands, would require parliamentary approval for troop deployments. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk has stated that Poland, a key logistics hub for support to Ukraine, will not send troops into the country. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz has expressed reservations about discussions of a European-led security force, emphasizing that NATO should remain the foundation of security. The success of any such plan hinges on the nature of the agreement to end the fighting. With Russia maintaining a substantial force of around 600,000 troops in Ukraine, analysts warn that any ceasefire leaving the bulk of them in place could lead to a renewed conflict. Moreover, the practicalities of deploying and sustaining a European force are challenging. France's military has just over 200,000 personnel, while the UK's is smaller, at less than 150,000. experts suggest that Europe would struggle to maintain a force of even tens of thousands over an extended period. Peacekeeping operations in Cyprus and Lebanon have lasted for decades, highlighting the potential long-term commitment required. Lithuania's defense minister, Dovilė Šakalienė, has pointed out the validity in criticisms of Europe's defense spending and military strength. She emphasized that Russia is preparing for a long war with significantly greater manpower and a faster-growing defense industry than Europe's. She questioned whether Russia's ambitions are limited to Ukraine, stressing the need for Europe to strengthen its defense capabilities to provide credible security guarantees. Meanwhile, within Ukraine, there is increasing concern and somberness. As the third anniversary of Russia's full-scale invasion approaches, Ukrainians are not only worried about Russia, but also about the apparent shift in U.S. policy. Trump's recent statements, echoing Russian narratives and pledging to stop the fighting, have been met with shock and disbelief. Trump's false claims that Ukraine is led by a dictator who started the war have been particularly jarring. Despite this, Ukrainians are rallying around President Zelensky, who has publicly criticized Trump for promoting Russian disinformation. Even Zelensky's critics acknowledge that he is not a dictator and that the world seems to be turning against Ukraine. Despite the challenges, Ukrainians have managed to prevent Russia from completely taking over the country, although a significant portion remains under Russian control. However, the war has taken a heavy toll, with hundreds of thousands killed or wounded, tens of thousands missing, and millions having fled the country. The mood has further darkened due to Trump's desire to quickly end the fighting on terms that many consider too favorable to Russia. The postponement of elections, while legally justified due to the war, has also been criticized by Trump, who echoed Putin's talking points about the need for elections. However, within Ukraine, there is little support for holding elections during wartime, as it would likely benefit the Kremlin by further dividing the country. An advisor to Zelensky has also pointed out the risk of Russian interference in any electoral process held during the conflict. The millions of displaced Ukrainians living abroad and in occupied territories would face significant challenges in participating, and the hundreds of thousands serving in the armed forces would find it difficult to vote or run for office. Analysts warn that holding elections before a peace agreement with security guarantees would be devastating for Ukraine, potentially leading to a situation where a new president signs a deal favorable to Moscow. The convergence of U.S. and Russian interests in promoting elections first, then peace, is seen as a dangerous strategy that could undermine Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. In the face of these challenges, Ukrainians remain resilient and determined to defend their country. Despite concerns about dwindling support and the uncertain future, they are united in their resolve to resist Russian aggression and protect their independence.